Good evening, or good morning, or good day, or good night. Welcome, everyone, to the Let's Talk Dream Research series. My name is Katja Valli. I'm one of your hosts, along with my co-hosts Melanie Rosen and Michael Schredel. And this is the Let's Talk Dream Research series. It's a great pleasure to introduce our speaker, the first in this Let's Talk Dream Research series, Deirdre Barrett, a dream researcher at Harvard, who's very well known to probably most of you. She's written 5 books, which include Pandemic Dreams and The Committee of Sleep. She's the past president of the Society of Psychological Hypnosis, and of course, the current president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. Also the editor of the journal Dreaming, which is the flagship journal for IASD. And Deirdre has lectured and led workshops at Esalen, the Smithsonian, and at different universities all around the world. And she also makes dream art, exhibited in different galleries all around the United States. So let's give the spotlight to Deirdre.
Thank you. So I think of dreams as just thinking in a very different biochemical and brain state. And I believe that we think about all of the same things we're concerned with awake in this state, and that actually perhaps the majority of it is our personal, emotional, interpersonal issues. But since most of dream research is about those things, I've become especially interested in how objective, professional, problem-solving, creative tasks show up in dreams also. So I've both done library research on famous examples of this and some research with subjects on kind of simpler problems. So that's what I'm going to talk about in the talk today. And are the slides showing up to everyone? Nod, Michael, if yes, it's on my screen. It's sort of going off the top. So dreams are so visual that it's obvious for visual art to get a lot of help in dreams. And anthropologists think that some of the most ancient cave paintings, the ones that show anthropomorphized animals or just generally magic, impossible things going on, are likely dreams. So dream art may go back as far as human art does in history, to the cave paintings. And through modern art history, many artists have represented dreams. Many centuries past, it tended to be famous dream examples because artists would get commissioned to do scenes from the Bible or illustrate a fictional book. William Blake did a lot of dream paintings, but again, mostly not explicitly of his own dreams, but he had lots and lots of flying dreams. So he would very often put a figure flying in to make it look dreamlike, even when the overt dream he was supposed to be illustrating did not contain flying. And Edward Burne-Jones illustrated the Sleeping Beauty series. This is the painting, the Rose Bower, for that. And again, it's a story in the book, but he said that he was trying to represent the light that he sees in his dream, which is a diffuse glow everywhere that doesn't have any central source as the core of what the lighting looked like in dreams. So all of his dream paintings have that quality. And then the surrealists much more explicitly advocated dreams as the ideal place to get inspiration. This is Leonora Carrington's Kite People. This is And Then We Met the Daughter of the Minotaur. This is The White People of Danath Danan, all Carrington. And then Carrington's best friend was the painter Remedios Varo. And Varo also painted a number of pieces from her dream. This is The Creation of Birds. This is Cat Ferns by Varro. And this is one of the few from either of them where the actual dream is recorded. Um, this is a dream of Varro's where she was sitting in a chair in a room and realized that she could see down through the floorboards. They were somehow transparent, even though they were there. And she saw what looked like a little cat, but she knew that it was her friend Leonora Carrington that was manifesting as the cat. So this dream is explicitly recorded. Some of the others are just mentioned as dreams. And there's some of both of theirs where we're not quite clear if they're from dreams because their waking imagery was fairly vivid. Salvador Dali explicitly recommended something he calls slumber with a key, where you hold a key between your fingers and you recline in an armchair and let yourself begin to drift off to sleep so that just as you're falling asleep, you lose the muscle tone in your fingers and the key will drop to the floor, making a noise that awakens you. So this captures the hypnagogic sleep onset imagery that would otherwise be lost. And this is his dream provoked by the flight of a bumblebee around a pomegranate. He had dozed off with a half-eaten pomegranate sitting next to him. And in his sleep onset, he was hearing the bee circling around, but he was seeing it as other yellow and black striped creatures like the fish and the tiger. And then I wanted to mention that all these examples I'm showing are very dreamy and they are from dreams, but there's not a one-to-one correspondence with them all looking dreamy or with the dreamy things coming from dreams. I really like the artist Shigeru Matsuzaki. So I had picked out this as the illustration of my book, The Committee of Sleep, because I thought it was just like a perfect illustration of the idea of this kind of down in the unconscious, this sort of other parts of ourselves are working on things that are vaguely communicated up to the conscious self. And the night skies in the background. But after I had selected this, I didn't necessarily think it was from a dream, but it looked so dreamy to me. But just after I'd talked Random House into putting this on the cover, Shigeru Matsuzaki came to Boston for the opening of one of his solo shows. And so I got to meet him at the reception and I asked him if he ever made pieces from his dreams. I was dying for him to say this was dream related, but I didn't expect. But he said just the opposite. 90% of the artists I interviewed said they sometimes use their dreams in their work. At least once they had painted something from a dream. He said, no, my dreams they're all terrible. The bristles fall out of the brush while I'm painting, or the paints get all smeared and ugly and I have to start over. That all my dreams are about things going wrong. No, I don't get anything from my dreams. So that seemed very ironic, given that I wanted his piece as my dream cover, which it is. And then at the opposite end of the continuum, Jasper Johns had a dream about he was standing on a ladder painting a giant American flag that just looked like a realistic but slightly crude American flag. And he woke up and he painted that. And it was the first time his art got any attention. And so he repainted versions of the American flags that hang in every museum of modern art. And yet they don't look the least bit dreamy. And then cartoonists are a sort of a special example of art, but art that has to be amusing. And I knew that Bob Mankoff, who was then the editor, the cartoon editor for the New Yorker, I knew that he had made some pieces from his dreams. So I got in touch with him asking if I could interview him. And he said, well, why don't you come by the New Yorker on Tuesdays, the day that all the cartoonists come by and pitch me their cartoons for the week, because they all sit around in this waiting room together and get called into my office one by one. So they're sitting there for ages. I'm sure they'd all love to talk to you. And I said, of course, of course. So on the day I came, of the 12 who were there, 4 of them said they had made cartoons from their dreams. Others said they'd thought about it or tried it out, but four had cartoons that they'd made that they were satisfied with as cartoons and had presented. And the one on the left is Mankoff's, the dream where his hair was falling out and he picked up the phone and asked the operator to get it back. And this made perfect sense in the dream, but also translates well into a cartoon. And he was the cartoon editor, so his was printed in the New Yorker. Joe Dater is the one on the lower right. And Joe had a dream where there was this baseball player who was taking human growth hormone, as many athletes did before they started blood testing for it, to improve his muscle. But he was turning into a lobster. And so the line was not actually in the dream, whereas Mankoff's operator get me my hair was really in the dream. But just to illustrate what's happening, he has the line, "Are you sure you used human growth hormone?" And then Roz Chast was actually not there the morning that I was there, but Mankoff told me that I had to talk to her because she did a lot of cartoons from her dreams. So when he got me in touch with her, she had just made a cartoon that was from a dream where she walked into a party with a date, and the date was her calendar. And in the dream, she was a little puzzled why, instead of human beings, she had this calendar as her date. But awake, just the pun on the word date, I'm dating my calendar, seemed obvious. So she has a cartoon where she walks into the room and says, "I'm dating my calendar," with her arm around this big calendar. And it appears in this book, but since then she's put out this whole book on dreaming, most of which are just kind of images straight from the dream that just rely for the humor on the really odd, bizarre juxtapositions that dreams often dish up to us. And then Solange Fabio is an architect, which is a special. I interviewed several architects who have used their dreams in designing buildings, but unlike anything you see in your dream, you can theoretically paint. But in my dreams, I see beautiful architecture, but it looks more like Escher's architecture. It would not, in an engineering sense, stand up and not fall over. But Solange dreams images that do translate into buildings, and usually that she's just already in the completed building. So she was going to enter a contest to design the Museum of Ocean and Surf in Biarritz, France. But she hadn't really started mapping out her design, just decided that the concept appealed to her, and that was going to be her next project, was to enter that contest. And she was coming back from Europe, kind of sleep deprived from jet lag, and she dozed off on the plane after she was thinking about this. And she dreamed she was in a big, stark, white, modern building with lots of right angles, except the overhead was, the ceiling was blue and it swooped in a irregular manner. And so she was mostly focused on staring at the ceiling and trying to figure out why it was this shape and why it was blue. And then she realized she was under the ocean and she was looking up at a giant wave that made up the ceiling of the building. And so she woke up from that dream and she sketched the upper left simple sketch and notes that are indecipherable to almost anyone but her, sketched that out immediately upon awakening. And then the lower image is her computer design of the building. And the upper right is after she won the contest and got the contract to design the building. That's the building about half completed. And as I said, about 90% of visual artists say that they use their dreams at least occasionally. But another element that's not as absolutely ubiquitous to dreams, but still there in most dreams in some way, is some kind of plot, storyline, characters. And so about 50% of fiction writers say that they have used their dreams in their art. And probably the most famous example is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. She was at Lord Byron's villa with several friends, and they were telling ghost stories late at night. And at the end of the session, Lord Byron challenged them all to write their own ghost story. And he meant like over the next days or weeks. But Mary Shelley went to bed and dreamed a dream with two scenes that became the key scenes of Frankenstein. The first one was of the stitched together creature and the scientists trying to bring it to life with electricity and thinking he'd failed. And then the scene where he's gone to bed, gone to sleep, and awakens with the monster standing over him and realizes it has come to life. And then he wrote the rest of the plot around those two linchpin scenes. And Robert Louis Stevenson had almost the same experience with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He had a dream with two dramatic scenes, one of which is where this doctor has made this concoction that's going to transform him and drinks it and turns into this kind of weird, horrible person, Mr. Hyde. And then another scene where he's been turning back and forth with the potion from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde, and he's Mr. Hyde, and he drinks the potion to reverse it, and it doesn't reverse it, and he can't get out of being Mr. Hyde. And again, those are really the most dramatic scenes in the book, and he constructed the rest of the plot around them. And as they say, visual art and narrative and characters are in most dreams, but most dreams don't even have any explicit auditory content, and a very minute number of them have music in them. But music is much more common in the dreams of musicians, and it's especially in the musicians who started their music training really early on. And Paul McCartney was one such. And he had a dream one night where he heard this beautiful melody, more traditional music than the rock that he was usually composing. And he woke up and got up and played out the tune on a piano and really liked it. But he was trying to think what it was, like he must have heard it somewhere. And so for 2 weeks, he went around humming or playing when there was a piano around and asking everyone, what is this piece of music? I dreamed it. And they go, that I've never heard that. That's yours. You composed it. And he's like, no, it must be something. But eventually, after he'd spoken to all the main musicians he knew, he owned it and composed the lyrics to Yesterday, and it became the most played song of all time. Now, McCartney, actually, that was a one-off, as many of the really dramatic, creative, or problem-solving examples are. He actually dreamed one other tune, which he wrote out, had the Beatles rehearse a little bit, and none of them liked it enough to put it on a record. So he dreamed one other not particularly successful song. But Billy Joel says that he dreams all of his music. And like McCartney, and he's one of the only two musicians I've talked to or heard of that does that. But like McCartney, it was just the instrumental part of all of his songs come to him in dreams. And he writes out the music right away, and then gradually over time, he writes the lyrics that go with them. And Linda Ronstadt is one of the few really major singers who does not compose any of her own music. She's actually co-written 3 songs that she used to do occasionally in concert, but they're not at all her main pieces, and she's not mainly into songwriting, but was singing from a very, very early age and thinking about what songs she wanted to sing and how to sing them. And so when I talked to her, she said that she hears lots and lots and lots of music in her dreams, but that it is music that already exists. And she actually hears things she'll never be singing some, but what was really during her singing career, the most striking thing was that when she would have picked a new song that she was going to do a cover of, she never did just very straight covers. She always did her own arrangements that were sort of putting her touch to the thing. And so when she was in the midst of her career, her musical dreams would often be that she was singing something in this way that she hadn't actually awake figured out yet that was very pleasing. And she woke up and wrote down the arrangement, or sometimes she'd just hear her musicians playing the instrumental part of something that she had decided to sing and realized that that's the way she wanted it arranged. So not composing new music in dreams, but composing arrangements in dreams. And then, like I say, all those people learned music very early on and really focused. It was their main passion from childhood on. But that's not true of all professional musicians. And so this is Anna Hegarty on the right. And she did not grow up wanting to be a musician, grew up wanting to do drama and theater, and sang a little bit in high school, but was much more focused on theater and didn't learn to read music until mid-20s, but is now much more a professional singer. And she told me that she does not hear any music in her dreams at all whatsoever. She's interested in dreams, but she wants to do Jungian interpretation of the dreams and just has never connected it to her creative practice at all. And she's singing here with Laurie Anderson, who also did not grow up mainly wanting to be a musician, although Laurie actually took violin lessons at the age of 5, but as a very part-time minor part of her activity, she started art lessons even earlier and was much more passionate about the art early on. And she told me that she does not hear music in her dreams. She actually did a series of paintings of her dreams, which she had a solo show of and has put a book out on. But in terms of music, she said none of her music has come from dreams, and also that she doesn't even hear music in her dreams, that she has a lot of dreams about being up on stage performing, but that she just knows sometimes she's singing or playing an instrument or both, but she doesn't really hear the music. It's just the concept that she's up on stage and she's performing and she enjoys this and she's connecting with the audience. But when I asked, so you've never used anything from a dream in your music, even though you did all those paintings, she kind of paused and finally she said, well, nothing, not the music specifically, but that sometimes in these dreams she was doing movements, either bowing the violin, but in a very exaggerated way, or sometimes just other random dreamlike movements. And that she noticed that after some of those dreams where the movement had been part of the satisfaction of performing, that she found herself on stage kind of imitating the exaggerated movements from her dreams as she performed, usually something about playing the instrument that she was doing. But that was her only association to really sort of using the dream in the performance. Science seems another field less obviously already related to the content of dreams, but probably most people know the Kekulé example of the benzene ring, where he'd figured out the molecules in benzene, but all known molecules were a straight line with side chains, so he couldn't figure out the arrangement. And he dozed off and saw atoms dancing in front of him, and then the atoms formed snakes, and then one snake reached around and grabbed its tail in its mouth. And he woke up realizing benzene was a closed ring, the first known one. And uh, and I want to point out two elements of that will repeat in some of these other examples, which are, first of all, vividly visualizing seemed to be an element of it. But secondly, he was stuck on the problem because the conventional wisdom was wrong. It was not a straight line with a side chain. So needing to think outside the box when the all other experts would be approaching it wrong was another element. Um, and um, and within science, there are a few abstract conceptual examples, but many of them are basically inventions. This one, I guess you'd call war, but it's got a certain scientific engineering element, which is the Korean turtle boat. In the 1400s, the Korean Navy and the Japanese Navy were at war with each other, and the Japanese were the larger, more powerful, and they were winning. And the Korean admiral had a dream where the way warfare was fought, it was out on the oceans, and they would shoot flaming arrows at each other's wooden ships, and that the arrows would sometimes kill the people on board. But whether they did or not, the arrows eventually caught the ships on fire. So in this dream, there was something that was kind of a giant turtle, but kind of a boat, and the Japanese were firing flaming arrows at it, and it bounced off the shell of the boat or the turtle. And so he woke up and constructed this turtle ship where he ordered his men to hammer out metal very thin and make a shell for the wooden boat. And they built a bunch of these, and they worked just like in the dream. The flaming arrows just bounced off them and didn't injure the people and didn't catch the boats on fire. And this reversed the course of that war. The first anti-aircraft gun was invented in a dream. J.B. Parkinson was actually working for the phone company with little, some of the earliest computerized chips to control the switchboards that used to be manually done by operators were just starting, and that's what he worked on. And the U.S. wasn't even in World War at all, but he was following the war, and the bombing raids against the Allies were very effective, and he was very concerned about how the war was going. And so he had a dream where he was with a bunch of Allied soldiers, and they had this gun, and they were firing at incoming Nazi planes, and they were shooting them down very effectively, which was not the case in the war at that point. And so he peered at this gun and what was going on with it. And there was a radar that was feeding in through his little chip for the phone company to the gun that was automatically faster than a person could use the radar information, swinging the gun around to point it where the incoming plane was. And he woke up and thought that that would work the same way it did for the phone connections. And it took him more than a year to get the attention of the U.S. military in thinking about actually building one of these, but that coincided with about the time the U.S. actually entered the war, and so these were actually constructed and actually changed dramatically the number of planes that were then shot down. Another invention example is my colleague Paul Horowitz here at Harvard designs the controls for telescopes. And unlike most of these inventions that are often a one-off, it's like the person is really stuck and then has the biggest breakthrough in their life. Paul says that when he's working on telescope controls, that it's a series of problems. Like every 2 weeks, he's got to figure out how to put together certain parts of the lenses, and then a couple of weeks later, he's working on a computer chip to control some other part, and he gets stuck on what's the best design. And he keeps a pad and pen by the bed because he absolutely reliably, anytime he's stuck, he will have a dream where he's looking over the shoulder of somebody who's holding the lenses or working on a computer chip. He's watching this man doing this, and a voice is narrating what the problem is. You could do it this way, but the drawback of that, you could sort of talks through what he's already done, and then says, and the best solution is, and he both sees the man putting the lenses together in the right pattern as the voice narrates. And he says they're unlike any other dreams of his. They're much more realistic and straightforward. And his whole lab group here is just completely used to Paul walking in the morning and said, okay, I dreamed what we're going to do next. And starting to give them directions from his dream journal. And just absolutely, it never fails him, which is quite the exception to most of these people. Srinivasa Ramanujan was India's greatest mathematician, and he was very self-taught. He read only basic math books and kind of made up his own version of some of the more elaborate ways of doing mathematical proofs. But he said all of them came to him in dreams, and he believed they were from the patron goddess of his area, Namagiri, but she didn't appear in the dream. He would just see these proofs flowing, being written in front of him, and he knew that Namagiri was sending them. And he eventually got to Oxford and sort of got his word out, even in this kind of strange system to most of the world's mathematicians. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So far I've been talking about spontaneous examples, but except for my friend Paul, most of these happen fairly occasionally. And there are techniques that can help you to dream on any kind of content you're targeting, but that includes questions or problems that you're working on solving. And so Henry Reed and other psychologists had already developed this more for trying to produce dreams about interpersonal things or healing dreams. And it's Henry's term of dream incubation, taken from the Greeks, who had these temples that people went to try to have healing dreams usually, but dreams of their choice. So modern dream incubation involves writing down, in this case, a problem or question as a brief phrase or sentence. But you can do this just with a topic. I want to dream about anything. But in my research on problem solving, it's you write the problem down briefly, you review it just before going to bed, and once in bed, you visualize it as a simple concrete image, or you can arrange something visual on your nightstand. You tell yourself you want to dream an answer to this problem. And in the old days, I used to tell people a pad and pen by the bed, but now a smartphone to dictate to is the more common one. And then upon awakening, don't jump up and do anything else. Focus on whether you're remembering a dream and whether it relates to the problem, and write it down. And in one study with college students, I had them pick an objective problem they already needed to solve but hadn't solved. Some used homework problems, but it had to be a sort of a identifiable right-wrong answer that you would know you had the right answer when you saw it. And they did the incubation at bedtime for a week. And as rated by the dreamers themselves, about half dreamed about the problem and 34% dreamed a solution, almost exactly a third. And as rated by judges who didn't know what problems went with what dreams, they rated, again, almost the same percentage as dreaming on the problem of half, but just a quarter, as rated by them, dreamed a solution. And the difference was mostly in some dreams that looked like they had a metaphoric solution to the dreamers, where if you didn't know what problem this was on, the answer would be a slightly nonsensical dream type thing, but to the dreamer who knew what problem they were thinking of, they immediately identified this as having a slightly symbolic interpretation to their problem. And this is the highest number of dream solutions in my research, or anyone's. Bill DeMint, Marty Schatzman, have done this with brain teasers, and the correct solutions get lower and lower as the problems get harder or as the personal motivation. I like brain teasers, but some people don't care at all, and you don't need to solve the brain teaser. But these were personally selected problems that they already needed to solve and cared about more intrinsically. But also, I think they were very easy ones that the person would have solved awake anyway, that were within their capabilities, but just not solved yet. So that sort of 50% getting a topic you're targeting seems to hold up across a lot of research on dream incubation, but the dream solutions get a drop off radically from there. And I think what both the anecdotes and the examples from my students tend to show is that during REM sleep, when most dreams are occurring, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex that has to do with very logical thinking, but it's also where that conventional wisdom would lie. It is very damped down. It's not completely turned off, but it's less active than when we're awake. So our logic is looser and what Ernest Hartman used to call casting a wider net, not as linear. And the secondary visual cortex is more active than average, which obviously relates to the fact that most people report a fair bit of visual imagery in their dreams. So that very much corresponds with what seem to be the areas that are most helped by dream problem solving. Any kind of problem that anyone works on, especially if that person's specialized, it can occasionally get solved in a dream, both in the student study and in the expert Nobel Prize winning things, but definitely ones that benefit from visualization or require thinking outside the box because the conventional wisdom is wrong. The clusters of those, or you'll notice the Kekulé example is just very strong on both. Visualizing helped him see it as a ring, but also dropping the idea of what molecules have to be structured like, which the dreaming brain could do more easily. And that although plenty of these happen spontaneously, they're likelier to if you are doing dream incubation and very specifically asking your dreaming mind or directing your unconscious toward that.